Today we'll be taking a look at the dungeons of Blue Protocol, but keep in mind that these were, to my knowledge, the only dungeons available in the closed alpha of 2019. Like the other Blue Protocol videos, showing footage from what I experienced, this will be another showcase. So there will be commentary, but there will also be parts of raw footage. For this video, you will see me take on a dungeon solo, and you will also see me take on dungeons in groups. So this is me heading towards my first dungeon ever. It's a solo dungeon, and it's located on the backside of this cave in the Asteria Plain. Here's your cool intro again, and this is the Insect Fortress. You're blocked by insect goo or some type of web, and you have to break through it. And then here you can see this first area is quite open, and there's just mobs scattered all around. Nothing really blocking your way, just enemies floating around. And at this point in time, I was only level 3, so I don't have many skills, but yet the combat is still pretty fun. But if you've watched my previous video where we explored the Asteria Plain, you'll know that I had a ton more skills. So bear with me because there will be later content and progression in this video. So here I'm actually destroying this hive that keeps spawning these bees. And whenever an enemy drops loot, you'll see these cool little chests. Now this is like a short tutorial or just pop-up letting you know that you can climb certain parts of the map or these walls. I think that's cool. Certain things like this don't really make too much of a difference in the game. It's not like you're fighting an enemy on the wall or anything like that. And it's not like, well, so far you're playing a platformer, but it's just cool that there are minor things and details like this in the game. And if you look on the left side, that 27 minutes and 18 seconds, I believe that we are on a timer. So you have to complete the dungeon within 30 minutes. Here's a notification telling me about maybe bosses or enemies that have telegraphs. So I'm fighting this guy, and you'll notice that he looks familiar. He's actually one of the, what seemed like a boss in the first trailer. Just watching this reminds me of how good the combat felt. But one thing I do think the game could do a little better, and I'll elaborate on this in another video where I list things I like to see and changes and all that, is that the impact of your attacks. I would like them to feel a bit more impactful. It's good combat, it's great combat, but if you watch some of it, you'll notice that a lot of the times the enemies don't stagger, and some of the hits just don't feel like they're actually hitting, if you get what I'm saying. So this dude is pretty tanky. Actually took me about 2 to 3 minutes to kill. That's not a long time, but when you only have 30 minutes to... Did I just fucking bow? Yeah, I guess I did. I'm such an idiot. Why did I do that? Anyway, yeah, so that first elite mob, I want to say, I don't really think that was considered a boss. It was pretty tanky. And then these are, I know I called them goblins in the last video. I don't know why. Maybe it's because Google Translate told me that. I'm still going to refer to them as goblins. And one thing I really like about this game's combat is that you can fight in the air. And here's another hive. So my priority is to take out this hive so that I don't have to deal with these bees. Now this area is where you fight what I would consider an actual boss. He has a core in the middle, and he's very tanky. He does this tornado spinning attack, and he also does some dashes. But the way to deal real damage to him, I believe, is once you make him land on his back, once you knock him out the air. So after dealing a certain amount of damage or attacks to this guy, you'll see him fall to the ground. It's still amazing to me that this is the combat at level 3. If you compare this to most other games, the combat doesn't look this exciting at such a low level. So right here you have the option to go upstairs, and then you also have the option to go down, which I think leads to the boss of the dungeon. But me, I was pretty curious, so I decided I would go and explore the upper level. There's just more mobs, like a lot of mobs you'll see me taking on. Thankfully, some of my attacks are AoE. Break through this web, and there is a chest. There wasn't another enemy or anything, it was simply loot. So now we go back down, and here's the boss. Now you'll notice that this guy kind of looks like a reskin of the first elite mob we fought in the dungeon, except maybe has a little darker color to him, and he has this aura of purple flames around him. So it's cool, it's definitely different, but it is a reskin for the most part, which kind of worries me. This was just an alpha at the same time, so I'm not going to be so critical over this. But that is one thing that I'm not really a fan of in MMORPGs, is how much enemies are reskinned. And again, I'm not trying to shit on this game. This is so early that they could use the same mob for everything, and I would have been like, oh, well, you know, it's the closed alpha. And they could just say these are placeholders for now. And while I don't think this one is a placeholder because they've shown it in the trailers, I just hope that in the future we get to see a variety of enemies. And this guy took some time to kill. I didn't really do much of wasting time in this dungeon, and you'll see that by the time we finish it, we've spent about 15-16 minutes in the dungeon. So for a dungeon with a 30-minute time limit, I would say they've done a pretty good job of making enough content to make the dungeon feel like it wasn't something you can just cheese. So after that dungeon, I am level 4, but now we're going to skip ahead to me matchmaking, which I think you can just do from the menu. You can open the menu and queue up for a dungeon. This dungeon requires you to be level 9, I think, and it was 6 players. This one's called the Dragon Claw Valley. Once I'm in the dungeon, you can see that I am level 9, so we've made some progress. So we have 6 players here. We have me, and then we have 1 tank using the sword and shield, 1 archer, and 3 mages. Notice that we have a level 25 with us, who looks to be a mage. So if at any point you feel like these mobs are just being cheesed to death, it could be because we have a level 25 with us. And here's the first boss or elite mob of the dungeon. At times though, you'll notice the camera gets a bit weird. It's like having the hiccups or something, but never did I really feel any lag or like all these particles and effects were holding me back. My only complaint with this is how, I guess, narrow and confined this dungeon is for 6 players. Like for a solo dungeon, this works perfect, but for a 6-player dungeon, it just feels like 6 people is way too many players for something this size. And my dumbass just fell off the cliff. What sucks is that I had to run all the way back to catch up to these guys. And here I finally made it. And yeah, here's the boss of the dungeon, another boar that we took out pretty easily, and I think we have the level 25 to thank. Now I'm back in the world and I'm like, oh, well, what the hell do I do? Look at this view. This is so nice. See what I mean? And yet this is an instanced zone. You just really wouldn't notice because of how open it looks. And here I'm level 14 and we're back into the insect fortress. But this time I'm going to add some music because again, I was in call talking to a friend. I've started this recording a few minutes into the dungeon, but this is to give you an idea of what the insect fortress is like at a harder difficulty with 6 players. Now this is the part where we fought that first elite mob, right? But now you'll see that there are 2 of them. And not only are there 2, but there are also some just like little baby mobs scattered in there as well. And these enemies are level 14. I like how during the combat when you use your special, you go into like a mini cutscene. Man, I'm getting destroyed here. I think this fight right here was the one that made me feel like 6 players is way too much. There are just so many animations that are going to go off in this very tiny circle. Look at how big this area is and you're fighting all these enemies at once with 5 other players. Here I died, I got my ass whooped, but I think I'm getting resurrected. And then they threw down a AoE heal. That's teamwork. Every once in a while you'll notice that these green bubbles are showing from this enemy when he gets hit. That's because he's poisoned. So I think it was our archer that poisoned this enemy. I don't know if you can poison bosses. I don't know if this guy would be considered a boss or just a elite mob, so that's why it works. But it would be cool to see if you could do that to bosses as well. And now we're fighting my favorite guy, the robot insect. Look at how tanky this guy is. He's actually level 18, so I don't quite remember what the level recommendation for this dungeon was, but it has to be up there. He has some debuffs on him, and I guess this guy would be considered a boss, so maybe you can debuff the boss. It looks like he's not only poisoned, but it seems like he was slowed at one point. And now I'm going upstairs again, just trying to grab whatever loot is back here. But this time there are 2 loot chests, and one seems to be kind of rare. And now we're going to the boss, but now he's got a gang with him. Not only just other enemies, but he has the hives as well, so that's going to spawn even more enemies. He's level 19. So I guess this dungeon right here balances out a lot more than the last one because our strongest member is only level 22 and not 16 levels above the requirement for the dungeon. Now right here, seems like he had some kind of rage mode, or he just summoned more enemies with that animation, but yeah, a lot of shamans popped up and now we have telegraphs everywhere. And of course it's a lot more difficult. I'm actually getting my ass whooped this time. I can't tell whether or not if anyone's tanking it or if it's just kind of random who he attacks. It seems like it's random, but I also keep seeing, I want to say charisma, whatever they're going for with that name. It seems like they keep getting attacked. It could be because they're dealing the most damage. They're the highest leveled in the party. And this dude is debuffed to hell, so definitely works on bosses as well. That's very good in my book. So yeah, we got some experience, we learned some new stuff, and we got a new chest. And that's pretty much all I recorded of the dungeons. I do have another dungeon recording, but it was me soloing the insect fortress when I got a bit higher leveled. Not really worth, since we've already shown that dungeon twice. But these are the dungeons that I took on during the closed alpha. It's pretty fun, but it feels more like these dungeons were designed to solo, but they have the option to take on with other players, rather than the other way around. In the future, we might see bigger dungeons or changes to this. I know I'm not the only one that felt that way, because I've saw other players express similar thoughts with the dungeons that we took on during this alpha. So with all that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will catch you all in the next one. See you soon, friends.